doing this week. Now the next thing I want us to look at is how we're going to be doing it. So obviously we're setting up these big displays, and then people are going to want to talk to us about it, and we want to talk to them about it. So how do we have conversations about that in our conversations also show don't tell? We don't just want to be hitting people with facts, we want to be providing them conversationally as well with evidence. So how do we show don't tell in a conversation? How do we show don't tell? So we've talked a lot about, again, practically the images, but how do we do that in a conversation? I gave you the example before of my time at the dentist. And I want us to go over that, those series of questions I call the human rights argument. So I want us to go over the human rights argument. Last year, during the Abortion Awareness Project, I was out there with my brochures. A girl starts walking by. I said, "Hi, what are your thoughts on abortion?" And she said, "I'm pro-choice." I said, "Okay, well, we exchanged names." And I said, "Okay, well, Naomi, do you believe in human rights?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Who gets human rights?" "Well, everyone." And then I followed up with, "Okay, and if two human beings reproduce, what species will their offspring be?" She said, "Human." I said, "Exactly, I agree. So if two human beings, if something's growing, then isn't it alive?" She said, "Yep." And I followed that up with, "And then doesn't it logically follow, as someone who believes in human rights for every member of the human family, as someone who understands science, that human beings can only reproduce other living human beings, doesn't it follow then that abortion is a human rights violation?" She paused for a moment.
Yes.
And she said, "Yeah, yes it does." And I said, "Naomi, just a few moments ago you were saying that you were pro-choice. And now thinking about abortion in light of human rights and seeing the pictures, because we're right in front of the display, seeing the pictures of abortion, what would you say your stance is now?" And she said, "Well, I'm pro-life." And again, in under 60 seconds, she went from being completely pro-choice to completely pro-life. Again, another time during the Abortion Awareness Project, I was thinking, it was like Monday morning, and I was just thinking about the human rights argument. And I was thinking, it kind of seems too easy. Like, question, 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 question. Now they're pro-life. And I was thinking about that, and this young man's walking by, and I said, "Hi, what are your thoughts on abortion?" And he said, "Well, not really an opinion, like kind of, it's okay if you do you, if people want abortion, they can have abortion, not really strong stance on it." His name was Julian, and I said, "Well, Julian, do you believe in human rights?" "Yeah." "Who are human rights for?" "Everyone." "And if two human beings reproduce, what species will their offspring be?" "Human." "And if something's growing, what does it tell us about that thing?" "Well, it's alive." "Okay, so Julian, you believe in human rights for every member of the human family, as do I. And you recognize in basic science that human beings can only reproduce other living human beings. So Julian, would you agree with me then, like that the logical following of those ideas would be that abortion is a human rights violation?" "Yep." And I thought, okay, that was way too easy. Julian's gonna walk down the way, and he's gonna be greeted by a pro-choicer who's gonna give a pro-choice flyer, and he's gonna say he's pro-choice. And so I said, "Julian, some people would say that in cases of extreme poverty, where a woman can't provide nutrition and shelter for herself, much less her child, she should be allowed to have an abortion." He said, "No, that's not okay." He said, "Well, Julian, some people would say, on a university campus where these girls are paying so much money to be here and they're studying and it's so important for their careers and their life, and if they have a baby, they're not going to be able to maybe get as good marks in school, or maybe they're going to have to take a break. Who knows what's going to happen? A girl who's pregnant at university, a lot of people agree she should be able to have an abortion." And Julian said, "No, you can't do that just because you're at university." And I said, "Julian, some people would say in the most horrific circumstance, if someone gets pregnant from sexual assault, she should be allowed to have an abortion. She didn't consent to sex, much less pregnancy, and now she has to raise a kid. People would say she should be allowed to have an abortion." And Julian kind of got frustrated with me. He sighed, he's like, "Okay, well, rape is bad, but you can't just kill kids." And I was like, "Okay, I agree with you." He's like, "Do you get it? Because I don't think you're getting it." I was like, no, I get it. I was just trying to see if you understood that abortion is always a human rights violation. Like, obviously I agree we should help people who are poor or university. If someone's been assaulted, we definitely have to help them, but I just want to make sure that you really understood that abortion is always a human rights violation." He's like, "I get it, okay." Kind of frustrated that I thought he was so dumb. And I was like, "No, I just needed to clarify, Julian." And the thing is, I've had that conversation repeatedly, again and again, just a series of a few questions. And for a lot of people who've just never thought through the issue, that's honestly all they need to become 100% pro-life. And so because verbal processing helps us remember things, that you are going to be seeing these list of questions so many times this week, I think we should all take a moment to say them out loud. So what is the first question of the human rights argument?
Do you believe in human rights?
I do.
Who gets human rights?
Humans.
If two human beings reproduce, what species will their offspring be?
Human.
If something is growing, then is it alive?
It is.
Doesn't it logically follow that abortion is a human rights violation?
It does, guys. I'm for life. Thanks. So again, just going through this. Now, what we're going to do is you can like turn to your friend or neighbor, whoever is around you, and I want you to ask each other in a series of questions, kind of we did, like we just did.
It's hard to talk. Oh, sorry. How are you? You want to be the pro-life girl? Yeah, I don't know what I think. People join together and they produce what they produce. If something is wrong, is it alive? So if two people join together, it's not like this is not like abortion, like one violation of human rights, and then it's the second time, I guess. Signs in that big truck. They don't use like I don't know signs. No. I use yeah, that's what people like yeah, it does. I'm trying to keep it in just a little place, looking like
Okay. Awesome. So again, you're going to be seeing it in your own words. It might not look exactly how it's put out here. For myself, especially for some reason, this question, the alive question, I often kind of switch up. Sometimes I leave it out. Sometimes I include it. Sometimes I kind of just assume it. But another way to ask it is like, if something is growing, then what does it tell us about that thing? You know, we just ask it in our own words, in our own way. But I encourage you to use this. Quick story. One of our interns from a few years ago, he like introduced CBR, talked to people about abortion, changed all these people's minds, and then the next year, so he spent 4 months on the streets talking to people about abortion. The next year he came to the Abortion Awareness Project, and we were debriefing at the end of the day. He was like, guys, today is the human rights argument for the first time ever. And I was like, what were you saying all these other times? All these other ways to talk to people. And he said, it just sounded so stupid I couldn't bring myself to ask people these questions. It just sounded so ridiculous. He goes, but I used it, and the 3 times I used it, they all changed their minds on abortion. So don't knock it till you try it. I know it's honestly so straightforward, so simple, but so many people just haven't gone through that very basic logic before. So again, asking people if they believe in human rights, going through that. And again, there might be some more questions that come out of it. People might have different things, but we're going to talk about how to do that. And really for show, don't tell, we're having a good conversation. I say that there's 3 tools we should always be using in our conversations. And these tools are common ground, analogies, and questions. Common ground, analogy, questions. I'd say we need to use these tools so much that if you're reflecting on a conversation and you realize you said something that was not common ground, or an analogy, or even a question mark, you really can take that opportunity just to think through, how can I say it differently next time to make it common ground, to make an analogy, or to make it a question mark? Because anything can be said as a question. Or I could say, can everything be said as a question? So whatever you want to say, whatever you want to communicate, you can just change it up a bit, make it a question if you do have a way to go with it. So common ground, analogy, question. And you can kind of see already how we use that in the human rights argument. First of all, they were all questions. And secondly, starting with something like, do you believe in human rights? That is common ground as well. So it's common ground and a question, which is two of my very favorite things. So common ground, analogy, question. What does that look like in a conversation? What does that show to people? So something we're going to hear a lot this week is when you ask someone, hi, what are your thoughts on abortion? A lot of people are going to say, I'm pro-choice. And I remember one time doing the abortion awareness project, I asked a young lady going by, what are your thoughts on abortion? She said, I'm pro-choice. And so I found common ground with her. I said to her, I agree with you that choices are a really valuable thing to have, and I'm so glad I live in a country where we have so many. Why is common ground so important? What does that show people? Well, first of all, it shows people that you care. You can't find common ground if you're not listening to someone. You're not taking the time to internalize what they just said and think, where can we connect on this? When we show people compassion, which is what common ground helps us find with them, we connect with them. We take what could be an argument and a fight between two strangers and turn it into a conversation between two friends, because that compassion that was just shown, that caring that you just communicated to them. Common ground shows that we care. After I found common ground with her, I moved on to an analogy. I said, imagine if there's a little baby on a blanket here, and I'm babysitting this little baby, and now it's my body, so it's my choice, and I want to have a dance party on campus right now. Can I do that? And she's like, yeah, girl, you can do that. So I was like, okay, I want to just have a little dance party. I can do this. She goes, you can do whatever you want. I said, what if I want to practice some footwork? So I'm doing this little dance move, and I end up kicking the baby in the head. Is that okay? And she looked at me with horror. She goes, you can't kick a baby in the head. And I said, why not? She goes, well, because you're going to hurt the baby. So we asked, okay, if I'm hearing you correctly, you think I can do whatever I want with my body, my choices, as long as those choices aren't directly harming somebody else? She said, yeah, for sure. What do analogies show people? Analogies show people what their worldview and their ideology looks like played out in reality. How many people that we're going to meet this week who say that they're pro-choice are thinking, I think it's okay to directly and intentionally, without any kind of consent, kill an innocent human being? How many people are going to be thinking that? Practically no one. And yet, if they say that they're pro-choice and they're referencing pro-choice about abortion, isn't that what that means? Exactly what it means. But people don't think of that. People don't see it that way. And so we have to show it to them through using an analogy where they'll realize, wait, I am pro-choice, but not about hurting other people. We're all pro-choice about some things. We're all pro-choice about, where, what airline we flew to get down here. We're all pro-choice about what schools people should go, or who their friends are. There's lots of things we're pro-choice about, but not about abortion, which directly harms an innocent human. And so we can show that to people. We show the reality of their worldview played out when used an analogy. And then after we said analogy, which you may have noticed, I asked a lot of questions through my analogy. I continued with questions. And I said, okay, if we don't think it's okay for me to choose to make a choice that harms a born child, why would it be okay for me to make a choice that harms a preborn child? She said, well, I think that's a bit different. I said, how so? And that's where we got into the real meat of the conversation about who the preborn are and what abortion does to them, which is exactly what I wanted to be talking about. Other people who have had that exact same conversation with at the end of that, when I asked if we can't kill the born, why do we kill the preborn? They said, that makes such a good point. You're totally right. Abortion is wrong. Right? And asking people questions helps people, first of all, to think. It's a lost art these days. A lot of people don't actually think through their positions. They just repeat what they heard and sounds good. And so it forces people to really think about it, to internalize, to process. Questions also have them bring out what they already know to be true. How many people on this campus know to be true that it is wrong to intentionally and directly kill an innocent human? How many people would agree with that statement? Everyone should. And how many people on this campus know that preborn human beings are human beings like you and I? I'd also say everyone does. And you think, well, no, they don't. Well, have you ever heard of someone, maybe a family member or a friend who's completely pro-choice, and they see an ultrasound photo and they look, oh, the little baby's so cute. I remember one of my friends was freaking out because a celebrity she likes had a picture of herself kissing her friend's belly because her friend was pregnant and had just said the celebrity was going to be the godmother of her little preborn fetus. Okay, the celebrity is very outspoken that they're very pro-choice. But as soon as they're chosen, someone's chosen that this baby is going to be carried to term, they recognize the humanity. It is a very weird thing to kiss somebody's belly. But it was totally acceptable, and everyone thought it was a super cute picture because they recognized that she was pregnant, there's a little baby, a little human in there, and they already had a relationship of godmother to goddaughter even before that baby was born. I had friends who looked at pictures of my mom pregnant with, say, my sister, and I remember one of my friends who's completely pro-choice saying, "Hey, look, Abby, there's you inside your mom." Again, this young lady is completely pro-choice, and yet she recognizes that my sister, Abby, the human being Abby, developed a younger version of herself that was inside my mother's body. People know the truth of the humanity of preborn children. People know the truth that it's wrong to kill innocent humans. And so we don't have to teach them those things. What we need to do this next week and going forward is draw out the truth that people already know. Make them their own teachers. Ask them for evidence. We can provide evidence as necessary, but we also can ask them to provide the evidence. And what's more compelling than evidence that you yourself have already decided is true, that you already recognize as truth, that you already realize. It's the easiest way to just shift someone's mind on abortion. Ask them to provide that evidence. So common ground analogy question shows that we care. It shows what their ideology looks like played on reality, and it shows them what they already hold to be true, what they already know to be true, what they already believe. Now, how do we do that? I'm not going to send you home tonight with homework to think of every single thing that someone can say this week and come up with a common ground, an analogy, and a question for it. That would take way too much time. However, we can go over just very simple ways in a moment, in a conversation, to always be able to pull up common ground, analogy, or question. To do that, I want to look at some different circumstances, because for a lot of people, circumstances are what they use to justify abortion. I had someone come up and say, well, what if a girl is really, really poor, and she can't afford to take care of that child, and maybe one of the reasons she's poor is because she's so young. She went on to say, what if, because she's so young, she has to be focused on her school and her education, and she has no support, that, the man's out of the picture, she has no one to turn to. And not only does she have support, but her parents are pressuring her to have an abortion. Maybe they'll kick her out if she doesn't have an abortion. She's in high school. How can she be kicked out? What's she going to do to take care of herself? And her pregnancy is completely unwanted. Nobody wants that child, and every child should be wanted. And maybe one of the reasons it's unwanted and she's in such a rough situation, what if that child was conceived through sexual assault? And to top it all off, maybe she's wrestling with her decisions, she's so lost and alone, she doesn't know what to do, she's in this horrible situation, and she finds out that her child was diagnosed with a disability. What are you going to do then? Now, not everyone is going to bring up every single one of these issues, but some people will in one conversation. Some people focus on one, some people focus on the other, but I want us to look at this and think about common ground and ask a question. How can we just easily, right away, have that for each situation? And so let's start with thinking of poverty. So it says, I think that we need abortion because people are living in extreme poverty. They can't afford to take care of their children, much less themselves, right? It's just too hard. And so you can simply say, I agree with you that. This quick phrase that we can all say, I agree with you that. If you're taking notes, write that down. I agree with you that. I agree with you that. That's a difficult situation. That's a hard situation. And maybe you have a personal story or something you can share, but all you need to be able to do to connect, to build that empathy with them is, I agree with you, that's difficult. And for some things, it might not be something that's difficult. It might be something like pro-choice, but that's a value. You can say, I agree with you, that's valuable. Choice is valuable. Someone says, I'm for abortion because of women's rights. I agree with you that women's rights are important. So practically anything you can find to agree with that it's hard and difficult, or you can agree that the idea is a valuable idea. And I would say I agree with you. Pro-choice is awesome because that is going to be miscommunicating to them. You can say, I agree with you, that choice is valuable. So that is a magical, wonderful little word. Remember to say, I agree with you, that. It clarifies and it points your common ground onto something specific. So I agree with you, that. And then moving on, in that conversation, I said, I agree with you, that'd be really difficult. And then I used an analogy. And I didn't have to stop and think and study to come up with a story of someone in a poor situation that would work. I simply did what I like to call introduce the infant. So they told me a situation about a pregnant woman who needs to have an abortion. And I replaced the pregnancy, just told the story exactly right back to them. But instead of a pregnant woman, a woman with a newborn baby, an infant. Introduce the infant. So he said, imagine if there was a woman and she is very poor. She can't take care of herself or she can't take care of anyone else. She just doesn't have those resources. Except instead of being pregnant, she has a newborn baby. We think she needs support. We can agree she needs help. We can agree that's a hard situation. Would we suggest solving that hard situation by killing her baby, her born child? And the young lady I was talking to said, well, no, you can't do that, that's awful. And so then I followed up with the follow-up and more questions, and I said, if we were to kill a born child because of poverty, why would we kill a preborn child because of poverty? And that brought the conversation right to the humanity of that child and what abortion does to them. And we ended the conversation with her becoming pro-life. Because in those situations, if someone says, no, that makes complete sense, they become pro-life, that's awesome. Or they might say, but I think that's a bit different. And then you can say, do you believe in human rights? Yes. Who gets human rights? But frankly, you can almost always take your conversation back to the human rights argument. And you can, again, just clarify that whole thing. So again, common ground analogy question. I'm going to give you another example. I was talking to a young man, and he had grown up in a third world country living in extreme poverty. So I said, wow, I just, affirmed him. I said, wow, that's such a hard situation that you grew up in. Wow, I'm so sorry they had to go through that. I'm so glad that you're out of it. So again, just conveying that compassion, that empathy. And then I decided this time to use a personal story. You can use an analogy, you can introduce the infant, or often personal stories are very powerful. I said, my sister lives in Haiti. She does awesome work there. However, she can't help everyone. And it could really burden her. She can be very saddened by the awful extreme poverty that people all around her are living in, and just can't help everybody. What if my sister Sarah called me up and said, Deborah, I have a solution. I hate seeing the fact that there's so many poor people I can't help. So I got me a machine gun, and I'm going to shoot them all, and they'll be all dead, and there'll be no more poor people in Haiti. I said, would that be a good solution to the problem of poverty in Haiti? And he said, well, no, you can't do that. I said, exactly. If I found that out, it doesn't matter how expensive it is, what kind of loan I need to get, I'm on the next plane to Haiti. I'm going to do everything I can. I'm calling people. I'm doing what I can to stop her from killing all the poor Haitians. That's awful. So if we're not going to try to solve poverty in other places or in our own country by killing poor people after they're born, why would we try to solve poverty by killing children before they're born? Again, common ground analogy question. Do another example. I was talking to a high school student, and she just said, I'm 15. If I get pregnant, there's no way I can go to school with a pregnant belly and be made fun of and bullied. I already get bullied. That would just be so awful. And then I'd have the kid, and I'd probably fail because I'm trying to take care of my kid. It'd be awful. And she said, there's no way. So I can kind of see where it comes from, but there's no way I can have a baby. And I said, I agree with you that it'd be really hard to be pregnant in high school and to have a newborn in high school. Imagine, though, I said, a new girl comes to her school. All I did was introduce the infant to the story she told me. Imagine a new girl comes to her school, and she has a newborn baby. And she's facing all those problems that you would face, and it's really difficult for her, and she's not getting her studies, and she starts failing. Would we say the solution to her true difficult problem is to kill that newborn baby? She said, well, no, that's awful. And we talked a little bit more, and by the end of the conversation, she's like, no, I need to talk to my mom and just let her know if I ever get pregnant, I'm keeping it, so she'll need to babysit. I was like, okay, awesome, talk to your mom. I was like, and if she doesn't want to babysit, here's our information, we'll find support for you. She's like, yeah, because I could never do that to a kid. Right? You just have to think through it. Common ground analogy question. Okay, time to practice. So we are going to turn, Magda?
I'm kind of confused with the poverty solution. Like, why would we try to solve poverty by killing the newborn? Because I guess it's just like the mom doesn't want to solve poverty by killing her baby. She wants to just solve future issues because of poverty, kind of. Like, so I'm confused as like how that speaks to a woman who's in that situation.
Yeah. So that's where the introduce the infant, I think, is a bit more like direct than the analogy used with like my sister in Haiti. Because you're saying, hey, a woman who has a newborn baby and is living in extreme poverty can't take care of them. Would we say a solution to that is to kill her baby? Versus a woman who's pregnant saying, I need to have this abortion because I can't afford to take my child. So they're in a very similar situation. One has a preborn child and one has a born child. Does that make sense?
Okay, yes. That would
So
make
yeah, so using the analogy with like my sister is just saying like when there's difficult, awful situations and people are extremely poor, we would never solve that by killing them. So it's a little less personal, but because people can picture like you in that situation, it sometimes can better speak to people. So again, there's different situations. I've used all sorts of examples or analogies. Introduce the infants, the easiest one, but sometimes when we have those personal experiences or stories, those can really impact people too. Any other questions? Common ground knowledge question? Okay, Maria, do you want to be pro-life?
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, what do you think about abortion?
I'm okay with it. I think that abortion should be available for like situations like I have a friend, and I know if she ever gets pregnant, her parents will kick her out of the house. So like for her situation, she definitely needs to have the option of abortion.
Yeah, I agree with you that if you got pregnant and you knew your parents were kicking you out of the house, like that's a terrible situation, and I would certainly try to help your friend in that situation. And imagine though that say there's a young woman who she's like her parents would be against her being pregnant, but she hides her pregnancy and she gives birth, and then her parents discover, wow, you have a newborn kid, we're kicking you out of the house.
Yeah.
Now at that point, in order to keep her in her family's home, would we say it would be okay to kill her newborn child in order to do so?
No.
No, definitely not, right?
Yeah.
So like if we wouldn't kill a born child just because her mom might get kicked out of the home, why would it be okay to kill a preborn child for the very same reason?
That's a good point. I'm pro-life now. So partner up and go back and forth just like me and Maria did. So take turns being pro-life and pro-choice. A really easy way is just to pick something from this list or another thing. However, I just want to clarify quickly, don't take the conversation further. So I was training a couple different groups yesterday, and I heard people like talking about like bodily autonomy and all these like other separate issues like philosophy. And I was like, all we're doing right now is practicing common ground, analogy, question. Common ground, analogy, question. So just practice that, and then once you have a turn, just switch and keep going back and forth. I'll ask questions.
So I think that I'm not very
Okay, awesome. Are we all still broke? Okay, good. Linda, change your mind. Okay, cool. So any questions from your conversations just now? Guys feel like you're getting a handle on the common ground knowledge question thing? Awesome. Yeah, I just encourage you, as much as you can agree with people, take those opportunities. Fran?
We were just saying, it does seem kind of awkward when you kind of have to admit that, yeah, I guess you're right, I don't know, I guess I'm kind of a fighter myself, I just go for you and say, oh, I guess you're right, or...
Yeah, like for people to say that to us?
Right.
Yeah, so it's different. Honestly, like I'm very impressed by the people who like realize that they were wrong and they change their mind and admit it in a conversation. Because I feel like I wouldn't. I know I wouldn't. And the things I've been challenged and had conversations, and it's like almost like I can feel in my heart that I realize I'm wrong, and I'll be like, I'm gonna research this more. That's my response, which I think is good. Like you should really look into things if you're changing your mind, especially on important issues. And the things that's fine. Like if someone says, "Wow, you really challenged me. I'm gonna think about this more." That's great. That's huge. That's awesome. And the thing is, there's some people who are gonna actually change their minds, and I do like to try to ask questions to help people through that process as much as I can. So that's why I ask a lot of people, after discussing abortion in light of human rights and seeing what abortion actually looks like, what's your opinion on abortion now? Or has that impacted the way you think about abortion? And that's when people will be like, yeah, actually it has. And sometimes admit that to you. But I would say like if you have a conversation with someone and they're not 100% pro-life and admit it, that's not like a lose. Like anything we can say that's getting them thinking, that's putting those images in their head, that has those questions in their mind, that's really impactful. And quite a few of our saved baby stories actually come from people who didn't say that they were pro-life, who weren't pro-life in that moment, but they kept on thinking about that image and they kept on thinking about the conversation after.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, one of the advantages of like finding common ground, using analogies and asking questions is that, like, say this person believes like we need abortion when the mom's really young, but then you draw out of it that like no, but like we already agree that we should be helping moms in that situation, and we already agree that we can't kill the born child in that situation. And so basically, when they change it can be easier for them to change their mind because they realize that what they're really believing now is just what they actually like believe deep down inside. If that makes sense. So it's just drawing the truth out of them, as opposed to us being like, see, I was right. Like,
Yeah, we're not just like facts and logic, and now you're pro-life. We're actually drawing out from what they already believe. So it's more like a realization that I actually always should have been pro-life, because that's in line with what I've been thinking and the beliefs I'm holding.
In regards to age, or actually any one of these, like
Yeah.
I don't know many alternatives to abortion aside from adoption. Or like if the mom wanted to keep it, then like what about finances? Then what? Like
Yeah.
are there things that
So there's on each one of our brochures, we have, in Canada we have a different number, but our website here we have optionline.org. You can put in their info and they'll find tons of resources here. So for example, especially in Fort Myers, they are set. There's these several amazing maternity homes that the spots will keep you for 2 years. So you go in like just near the end of your pregnancy, you can be there till your child's a toddler, and they don't just provide for your needs and your child's needs, they actually help you get a college education if you don't have college, which is huge in the States because it's really expensive here. They help you get educated and they help you find work. And then they babysit your kid while you're getting educated, getting work. So there's a ton of support. And quite frankly, there's so many different examples. Everywhere you look, there's always people coming out in support in different ways. And so that's where most people who choose not to get an abortion do not choose to place their child for adoption. And I think it's good to mention that there's always there's couples who are fertile, who are solid, who are amazing, loving. They can't have their own kids. They would love to raise and love your baby as their own. That said, if you want to care for your child, there's so much support for you. Auctionline.org, and it'll be on every single brochure you're handing out. You can just go in, put in their zip code, and they'll find tons of resources. Yeah, and at the end of the day, even if say someone was, if you think of the idea of poverty, if someone has a newborn and they don't have support, we still wouldn't say solutions to kill that child. Like even if you have to be creative, even if it's going to be very difficult, we wouldn't, at the end of the day, we wouldn't kill that baby. Any other questions?
I've had this conversation with one of my old coworkers before, and he acknowledged that like the baby in the womb is human and all that. And I kept bringing introducing infant and all that, but he just couldn't get over. He's like, well, it's different because it's already in the world, and I just didn't know how to get over that. And especially when they already acknowledge in the womb it's the baby, it's still human life and everything, but it's when you've already made the decision to have the baby, then you it's just different than I just didn't know how to get over that. What do you?
So Maria's going to cover that extensively this afternoon.
Okay.
But that is a very good question. So kind of what we've been going over now is the building blocks of how to have a conversation, and whatever information we study this afternoon, you can always put into common ground analogy question to respond to it. And just again, asking more questions. Something we just cover really quick is, I know for some people, and I think I've heard some people say this, is it's different, it's just a fetus kind of thing. And I've heard that even, especially in the human rights argument, they're like, oh, that does make sense, it's just a fetus. I was just well, can two human beings reproduce a cat? What species is a fetus, right? Well, if we're talking about just a fetus, who are we talking about? Can cats have human fetuses? Can humans have dolphin fetuses? Who are we talking about? I remember one lady, she said, it's just a fetus. And I said, what kind of fetus? And she said, oh. And then she shook her finger at me and she was like, oh. Do you mind just answering my question? She's like, it's a human fetus. I was like, exactly. So yeah, simple just ways what kind of fetus or things like that. Just simple questions you can continue to answer. And quite frankly, one of the reasons I love this project so much is you're going to have to all day talking to all these people who are all there. And sometimes you overhear someone's conversation, oh, that was a super cool question. I'm going to ask that. I think for me, one of the huge ways that I've learned all this stuff, yes, I've read books and yes, I've attended talks and trainings and all sorts of things like that. But for a lot of it for me is just having conversations, learning from them and learning from the other people around you. I don't think lunch is quite here. Do you know over there?
I've asked.
Did you ask me, send a message to Dora?
No.
Okay, because they have my phone. They don't have phones. Most of them
to
doesn't
the
work. Okay. Maybe text it because I don't have any notifications on. You'll see a text. Okay, so lunch will be here soon, but since we don't have lunch, I'm going to talk a little bit more about common ground analogy question. And the thing again, obviously, they're building blocks. This doesn't always go common ground analogy question. You're going to use those three tools in different ways. And one of the ways that I usually go a bit off, not the 1, 2, 3 so easy, is, for example, something like when people bring up sexual assault. And that is a question I know all of you are going to get this week. People are going to ask you, what about rape? And when someone asked me that question, a woman asked me that not too long ago. She said, I can agree with you almost on everything except, what about a woman who's been raped? And so at first, I wasn't just I agree with you, that's bad, and move on, because that just seems completely heartless when they're talking about something that obviously is probably so personal to them. We know that 1 of every 3 women or have been sexually assaulted. And so if we're talking to someone, they're talking either about their friend's story or their sibling's story or their mom's story or their own story. And so they're asking you, maybe not even just like, are the preborn human, but are you human? Like, do you care about women and girls and who've gone through something so horrific? And so I had to spend extra time and make really certain that I was communicating the compassion that I do have, the fact that I am horrified by sexual assault. And so I started speaking slower, I lowered my voice, I softened my voice a bit, and I said to her, I agree with you that sexual assault is a horrible, it's a heinous crime, it's the worst thing someone can do to somebody else. And I think we as society have failed at preventing it. And we've definitely failed at prosecuting rapists, and we've failed in so many ways in supporting and coming alongside and helping victims of sexual assault heal and get support. And I said to her, in our country, and then I moved on again, more to a bit of an analogy, I said, in our country, we don't give the death penalty to a guilty rapist. How is it fair to give the death penalty to that innocent baby just because the crime's their parent? Is that just? She said, you know what, you're right, that's not really fair. And she became 100% pro-life. And last year I was talking to a young man at one of the Florida universities. And he talked to one of the attendees that morning who changed his mind from being pro-choice to almost being fully pro-life. And when I spoke to him, he just had the one exception. He said, I only think abortion is acceptable in the case of sexual assault.
What do you know outside?
Pardon?
You put outside or in here?
In here, but give me 2 minutes. Thanks. What about the situation of sexual assault? And so I said to him, and when he said even those words were sexual assault, I said, when he said rape, I just can see that he had really great deep sadness in his expression. So I just said to him, I said, Robbie, I can see that like you're really broken, you're really sad about the situation of sexual assault. And that's so important, and I'm so glad to hear that, because if all guys were like you, Robbie, sexual assault wouldn't be a problem. We need more men like you. And again, whenever we can affirm people and call them the best part of who they are, the best person they can be out of them, it's really important. And when I said that to him, his face just broke into this huge smile. And I said, Robbie, last year, I met a girl on this campus. Her name was Eliana. And she was just sitting on a bench crying. And I went over and sat down next to her and said, are you okay? And I can't help but notice you're crying. And she looked up and she pointed to a young man a bit away from her, and she pointed to him and she said, he wants me dead. I said, what do you mean? I don't think anyone wants you dead. And she said, no, he thinks I should be dead. I said, what do you mean by that? She said, look at his sign. He was holding a simple cardboard sign where he'd written in a marker, pro-choice. She said, I was conceived in rape, and he thinks my mom should have had the right to kill me. He said, Robbie, could you look into Eliana's eyes and say that she was wrong? I said, I could assure Eliana that she was safe, that no one on campus was going to try to kill her as a 19-year-old that day. However, was she not correct that if her mom had chosen abortion, it would have been her life? Robbie, can you look into Eliana's eyes and say that abortion in a situation where someone's pregnant from sexual assault is okay? Robbie thought about it. He said, where do I sign up? He wanted to join the pro-life club on campus. He was completely on board because he understood, because he saw his ideology played out in reality, what would happen if he was okay with that. And so whatever the conversation is, it's not always going to look, point by point, exactly the same. But as we reach out and show our compassion, as we show don't tell, no matter the situation, no matter the circumstance, we can be changing hearts and minds and saving lives. Lunch is here?
Yeah, it's a big platter, so
Okay.
it's right outside.
Right outside? Cool.
Okay, everyone, let's begin by just quickly reviewing what crucial tools did Devorah share with us this morning. There's a set of 5 questions that you're going to be using in every conversation. What is it called? Who can tell me the questions that are in it? Just one volunteer.
Do you believe in human rights?
Yeah,
Who are human rights for?
all humans.
If 2 humans reproduce, what would their offspring be?
Human.
If something is growing, what does that mean?
That it's alive.
Does that not mean that abortion is a human rights violation?
Mind blown, it absolutely does. And what are the other 3 crucial tools that we are using in all our conversations that are building blocks?
Common ground, analogies, and questions.
Yes, common ground, analogies, and questions. And now for many people, the human rights argument in combination with common ground, analogies, and questions, that's going to be enough to make them completely pro-life. I remember at AAP last year speaking to 4 people in a row who went from either pro-choice or neutral to completely pro-life, and all I used was the human rights argument and common ground, analogy, question. However, there are some people who maybe that's not enough to maybe that's not enough evidence to convince them. Some people will still believe that a preborn child isn't really human, especially early on in pregnancy. And so we need to turn to science to show people the science of when human life begins. Because the pro-life position, it's really simple. Human rights are for human beings. Human rights should begin when human life begins. And we know when human life begins. And that's at fertilization. I'd like to read to you a quote about the science of fertilization from Scott F. Gilbert's textbook, Developmental Biology. It's a textbook that's used in universities in Canada, such as the University of Toronto. And Scott F. Gilbert states, if we go to the very title of chapter 7 is Fertilization, Beginning a New Organism. Scott F. Gilbert states that fertilization is the process whereby 2 sex cells, or gametes, fuse together to create a new individual with a genome derived from both parents. Fertilization accomplishes 2 separate ends. Sex, the combining of genetic material from both parents, and reproduction, the creation of a new organism. Fertilization is when a new, whole, living human being starts, and it's not controversial, it's just a scientific fact. One time I was speaking with a student who challenged me saying that, well, before you have that new human embryo, the single-celled human zygote, you have a sperm and an egg, so why isn't a sperm half a human? And so and he said this in kind of a joking way, but I decided to take him at his word, and I said, if you have a moment, I think there's really good scientific reasoning to understand why a sperm is not half a human. And he said, okay, and he paused, and I said to him, when scientists are classifying cells and organisms, they look at 2 criteria, cell composition and cell behavior. Now, a sperm cell and an egg cell, what's their composition? Well, each of those gametes is composed of 23 chromosomes, but that's only half the genetic material needed for a human being. When sperm and egg fuse, there's now at least 46 chromosomes. There's the full composition needed for a new human being. However, I then said to him, that change in composition is not the only thing that happens at fertilization. It's not just 1 + 1 = 2. There's also a change in cell behavior. The behavior of a sperm cell is to penetrate, and the behavior of the egg cell is to be penetrated. However, at fertilization, there's a radical change in cell behavior. The new human embryo, rather than working to penetrate or be penetrated by another cell, instead, she does neither of those things. Instead, she self-directs her own growth in a coordinated manner so that she can go through all of the stages of development that a human being is supposed to go through. That's why if you have that single-celled human embryo, if you wait 3 weeks, she'll have developed a heartbeat by then. But if you take a sperm cell and wait 3 weeks, all you're going to have is a sperm cell. And it's those radical changes in cell composition and behavior that denote the change from gamete to organism. Yes? Okay.
The heartbeat is there, does that imply that there's a brain as well developed?
At 3 weeks, not yet. The brain is beginning to take shape and the neural pathways are being laid down. But your heartbeat is actually to pump oxygen through your body, whereas your brain is to control the coordinated function of your body. So the early embryo at 3 weeks, she already has a beating heart. But at 6 weeks, we can detect her brain activity on an EEG. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Now, obviously, what did we learn though from Devora earlier about how we're sharing our tools? Should I just be telling people life begins at fertilization? Is that the most effective way to communicate? No, we want to be not just telling people, we want to show people the truth that human life begins at fertilization. And so I'm going to share with you 2 easy tools that you can use to do so. When I was at my first abortion awareness project, I'm all revved up for activism. I've just sat in the same class you guys are doing now. I talked with a young man who said that we don't know when human life begins. It's a debate. Some people say it's this point in pregnancy, some people say it's birth. And so I decided to use a tool with him that we like to call before fertilization, at fertilization, or sometime after? Before, at, or after? I said to this young man, you know, right now we don't agree on when human life begins, but would you agree with me that it has to begin at one of 3 points? The way I see it, human life has to begin either before fertilization, at fertilization, or sometime after. That's the whole spectrum, right? And he said, yeah, that makes sense. And I said to him, okay, let's look at those options. Let's look first at before fertilization. Could a sperm left alone in a man's body, or an egg left alone in my body, ever develop into a toddler or a teenager? And he said, no. And I said, yeah, I sure hope not, otherwise we'd all be pregnant all the time. So can we agree that human life can't begin before fertilization when we just have sperm and egg? And he said, yeah, that makes sense. Nearby there was a man protesting that had a sign that said, if abortion, and pardon my language, if abortion is murder, then masturbation is genocide. At this point, this young man looked at it and said, so that guy's sign is wrong. He said, yes, his sign is wrong. We know that sperm and egg are not human beings. Let's look at after fertilization, I said to him. Imagine I saw a little 2-year-old girl walking down the street, and I'd never seen her before. Would I assume that she popped into existence right then, just because I hadn't met her before? And he said, no, of course not. Right, I said, what probably happened 2 years earlier? Well, she would have been born. Yes, I said to him, and where did that newborn come from? Newborns aren't brought in by the stork, right? He said, no, like she came from her mother's body. Yes, I said, that newborn developed from an earlier version of herself, the fetus. Now, does a woman go from not pregnant one day to suddenly waking up with a 20-week fetus kicking in her belly? Is that how pregnancy works? No, he said, it takes time. Yeah, it takes time, I said. That newborn developed from an earlier version of herself, namely the embryo. Now, as I just shared with you guys, an embryo at 6 weeks, after fertilization, we can already detect her brain activity. At 3 weeks, she's already got a beating heart. But does a woman go from not pregnant to suddenly pregnant with an embryo with a beating heart? Or suddenly pregnant with an embryo with detectable brain waves? And he said, no. I said, yeah, what happened 6 weeks earlier or 3 weeks earlier? Didn't that embryo come into existence at fertilization when sperm and egg fused? And at this point, as the young man had been listening to my words and studying our display, he said, I agree with you. Human life does begin at fertilization. Now, our conversation got cut short by external circumstances at that point, but I could have easily followed up with a question, and shouldn't human rights begin when a human being's life begins? I now want us to take a few minutes to practice this with our neighbors, and I know that it can be a little bit trickier to practice before and after. So if I say to you, like, well, if you're pro-life, then what do you think that like every period is killing a baby? How might you respond to that?
Because that's just the eggs, and the eggs is just 23 chromosomes, whereas like a human needs 46 chromosomes, so one is not a human life.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's definitely true. And are there any, because we're all about common ground analogies and questions, do you think there's any way you could word that as a question? Like exactly what you just said, but word it as a question?
What is the composition of a human being when it is a cell, or in its earlier stages?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, although I'm sharing composition and behavior with you guys, sometimes you might not want to use that elevated language with people because people might not know what you mean because they're not educated in science. But I think even using that same thing, but maybe wording it a bit differently, like, okay, does an egg cell, like we both know that eggs only have 23 chromosomes, right? Is that the genetic material, like is that enough genetic material to make a human being? Or even a simpler question, be like, okay, well I have eggs in my body right now, am I pregnant? Or, Deborah?
See, a question I like to answer is like, okay, so an egg cell left alone by itself, will that ever grow to be an adult human being?
Yeah. Because I think asking those questions,
simple way.
Yeah, make it really simple, because so that people will be able to tell you the truth for themselves. Sorry, did you have a question, or are you just gonna? No, you're just okay.
Were you ever actually talking about the period thing? Did we answer that part?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, if somebody says says like, you know, a period is killing, a period is just the loss of an egg cell, right? So I could say to someone, well, you know, could a sperm like left alone in someone's body or an egg left alone in someone's body ever develop into a toddler or a teenager? And then if they say no, we might follow up with saying like, yeah, we know that an egg cell doesn't have all of the genetic material needed for a human being. So that's why we know that that's not killing someone, that's just the loss of a part of my body. Yeah.
And then even like a really easy way, sometimes I'll just like rub my hand. Like, okay, right now I'm killing skin cells. Am I dead? No, it's just a part of me, not me. So what, like, is an egg cell a part or a human whole, a whole human being?
So could you now take a couple minutes with the person next to you and practice before and after? You know, one of you be the pro-choicer and say, we don't know when human life begins, or, and then the other person take them through those three options. So, go.
You got it.
Yeah, good.
All right.